Okay, we're going to start the body system number 3, the third one right now in this series. We're going to do digestive system today, digestive system. And like the other two systems, um, and with every system that we're going to do after this, there's always going to be some things you know about it and some things you don't know. And the purpose of these videos is to really give you guys just a good review of thinking about what this body system does, and then to extend what you knew or what you remember into some new territory so that you think about the system in a way that is deeper than you have in the past. So I'm always going to try to do a good job of giving you a basic review of the essentials of that system, but then extend it into some new things and some new connections that you can lock into your brain. So, digestive system. Before we do digestive system, let's just go ahead and talk about really what the word digestive or digestion is all about. So, what is digestion? And then we're going to get into the why of digestion. What are we doing? And uh, if you had to tell somebody what's digestion all about, you'd probably tell them that and I think most of you know that it has something to do with food. And it has something to do with, a lot of you might even know that it has something to do with breaking food down. Okay? But we're going to talk more about what that means and why you need to do that. But you would be right. Digestion is all about food, but specifically about what your body does with the food that you eat. And it's all about breaking down molecules. And again, that just leads to another question of why you would want to break down molecules. This is a great time for a review, and I'm going to take one slide to review things in just a few minutes. But if we are all about breaking down these things called molecules, I want to review with you guys what that really means. And to do that, you have to remember what molecules are all about. And this gets right back into chemistry. It's very interesting, but digestion is really all about setting up a system so that your body can do a lot of chemistry. It's about molecules. We need to break them down in digestion. So let's just do a quick review about what are molecules. So what are molecules? So you remember that the basic building blocks of everything, the air, the table, you, anything that's matter is made up of atoms. So matter is always made up of atoms. And there's different types of atoms, and if you really were good and remember, you'll remember that like the thing that makes this oxygen atom different from this, C stands for carbon. The thing that makes one atom different from another is the kind of the numbers of those particles that are inside the nucleus and things like that. That's too much. I don't want to go into detail there, but there's different kinds of atoms depending on how many particles they're made up from. And the atoms have names that you guys know and that are familiar, like carbon and oxygen. I'll just talk about the ones here. This one is an N. See if you can guess an atom that begins with the letter N, but that would be nitrogen. This one is H. What atom begins with the letter H? That is hydrogen. Hydrogen. This O is oxygen. This C is carbon. So atoms are stuck together. They're stuck together sometimes. If they're not, they're just atoms. And a lot of atoms aren't stuck to anything. But if they are stuck together with other atoms, that is a molecule. So molecules are nothing more than just a bunch of atoms stuck together. So that's review. We did a lot of that when we did our unit when I did our unit in chemistry. So if you look at this first panel, and it looks complicated and it's all fancy, and you see these atoms all hooked together, but right away you should be saying, okay, that's no big deal. This is just a molecule. Okay, and in this figure they're showing two different molecules. So here's one, and here's another. And in this arrow here, they're hooking these two together. They're going to stick this carbon onto this nitrogen to make one bigger molecule here. And then this water is left behind. It gets kicked out. So you form a bigger molecule, but you lose these guys up here, and that just gets kicked out as a water molecule. So this is really all about chemical reactions. Chemical reactions are when you stick atoms or molecules together, or you break them apart, or you break them. This picture up here is just showing that. So if this is one of these I've circled here, if this circle here is, let's say, this guy here, and this circle here is, let's say, this one here, they're just showing you that you've got a bunch of small molecules and you're hooking them together to form a larger molecule. So, for example, one of the large molecules that your body needs to digest are these proteins. So proteins are made up of these little pieces that are stuck to each other. And most of the things you eat, all of your food is made up of really big molecules that are made up of small pieces stuck together like this. So digestion means you have to start breaking these guys apart. And when you're doing that, it's really just the opposite of this arrow. You're going from big molecules like this, and when you digest, you're breaking them into the smaller parts and pieces that make them up. That is what digestion is. You're breaking apart big molecules. So that's what it is. We've kind of covered this part here, but I haven't told you at all why your body wants to do this with chemicals and molecules. Why is it important for your body to be breaking big molecules that you eat down into their smaller little pieces? The answer to that is, let me erase this and write it here. There's two reasons. Why digest? And there's going to be two reasons. The first is you break them apart into building blocks. Building blocks. So let's just say you're eating a hamburger, and there's a bunch of protein in that hamburger. Those proteins were made by some other animal. They're large molecules. Your cells want to use them to make its own proteins. So it breaks them down into the little parts and pieces so that your body can hook them together in a way where it's making the proteins that it needs. So that's one reason you break big molecules down to get building blocks to make new molecules that your body needs and wants. So you use the big molecules, you bust them apart for the building blocks. The second main reason is, I don't know if you remember, but in a lot of times when we talked about chemical reactions, and remember, when you're breaking these apart to make building blocks, that's also a chemical reaction. And a lot of times when you break molecules, you get energy out. You get energy out of that process for some chemical reactions. Some chemical reactions, you can only get them to go if you put energy in. But usually when your body's breaking down big molecules, you are getting energy out. So that's the other reason your body needs the energy. So you get two essential things out of digestion. You get building blocks for new things, new molecules that your body needs to make, and you get the energy out from doing that. So that's what it's about. And the whole digestive system is just about breaking down these big molecules. So now we can finally get into the structures and functions. But it's also a little bit more complicated here because all the parts and pieces that go into breaking down your food into tiny little molecules, there's a lot of them. It starts at your mouth and it goes down, through the tube leading to your stomach, and then there's the intestines. So the structures and functions get a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of them, and we are going to go through them one at a time, where I'll talk about the structure and then I will talk about the function of that structure, and we're just going to follow the path of the food starting with the mouth. We're just going to follow the food. So we'll start with the mouth and salivary glands, but the quick overview and the things that we're going to focus on is the food goes from your mouth down. When you swallow it, it goes down a tube that's leading towards your stomach, and that tube is called the esophagus. Esophagus, that's the second one. So we start at the mouth, then the food goes down the esophagus into the stomach. This tube, the esophagus tube, dumps out into your stomach, and it goes like this, and then this is liver here, but just behind the liver, the esophagus is connecting with the stomach here, and now the food is in the stomach. After the stomach, the food starts going into these complicated tubes that are in your belly region. The first set of tubes, they're all called intestines. The first set of tubes is called the small intestines because they're narrower. The small intestines are narrower tubes. And then the large intestines are also tubes, but they're just a little bit thicker in diameter. And that's what you see here. That's this red stuff on the outside. So it goes mouth, down to the esophagus, into the stomach, small intestine, and then large intestine goes up, across, back down, and then into the last part of the large intestine, where you're ready to get rid of whatever food your body couldn't digest. All right, so we're going to go one at a time, talk about those structures and their functions. So the mouth, the first part is the mouth, and associated with that is the salivary glands, which are making the spit. But the spit is important for digestion. So the mouth starts the breakdown process. You're going to start breaking down this food into smaller pieces by chewing. So a lot of the structures in your mouth, like the teeth and the tongue, to kind of move the food around, the big pieces of food around to your teeth, where your teeth can start crushing it. You literally start breaking down the food with your teeth. You just start chewing it down into smaller pieces. Now, I want to talk about these. These are these salivary glands. So spit is also called saliva. And so the salivary glands are dumping, they have little tubes, and they're dumping the fluids that they make into your mouth. And there's a few of them. There's the parotid, submandibular, sublingual glands. The names aren't important. These are the glands that make spit. And all glands are making a liquid. They make liquid. They make liquid with stuff inside the liquid. It's not just water. And what your glands are making, and you're going to see glands all throughout the digestive system, but they're making a bunch of proteins. The glands are making proteins. I'm going to write making proteins that help digest. And those proteins are called, I'm introducing, these are a lot of terms here, but those proteins are just molecules. They are called enzymes. So These glands are really all about getting enzymes into your mouth. Why do you want enzymes in your mouth? And the answer is here. Enzymes, you remember this stage here where you're starting to break down molecules? You're starting to break them into their smaller building blocks. Guess who does that? Enzymes do that. They do the chemical reactions of breaking down the big molecules into their building blocks. So enzymes do that. They help your body do those chemical reactions so that you can get the building blocks and the energy out of that. And right away, your body is making enzymes even at the first stage of digestion in your mouth. The spit, the glands in your that make the spit and saliva is secreting enzymes, these proteins into your mouth that start the digestion process. Okay. So after this, you remember, after your mouth, there's the esophagus is just a tube and not much happens there. It's just a tube to get the food from your mouth into your stomach. So after this, we have the esophagus, and the esophagus, you can see it comes down and it's dumping here into a picture of the stomach. So a few things. So the stomach is a much larger tube, but it's still just a tube, but it's a little bit, it's very wide because it's holding the whole meal for a little while, and more digestion is going to happen inside the stomach. So it's not surprising that this picture here is like what you would see under the microscope. So they took a tiny little section out of the wall of the stomach and they blew it up here. So this is what you would see under the microscope. And guess what? You get a bunch of cells that are in the wall of the stomach that are all in here, all in this whole wall, up and down and all around the stomach, that there's more glands that are making more enzymes. And these glands also make the acid that's in your stomach. And the acid does a couple things. The acid helps with, let's just say it helps with digestion. And also, it also helps because a lot of the enzymes that are in the stomach, the enzymes only work in acid, which is interesting. So your stomach gives them an environment for these enzymes to be able to work, and I think also the pH is really about if you're breathing in bad bacteria or viruses, or swallowing bad bacteria and your viruses that get into your mouth, the acid is also about killing microorganisms. Again, and this is also a common theme. The stomach is all about digestion, but it also has a job to help you stay healthy by killing microorganisms. We see this with every body system where things are multitasking. They're doing two different jobs at once. This is just another example. And in every body system, there's examples of this. So in the stomach, more glands, more enzymes, you're breaking down the molecules into their building blocks. And I want you to, and also though, the stomach is squeezing and churning, so the food is in here just being tumbled over and over and over and over, and that helps mix everything and break down the food even more. And remember, back to the muscle unit that we did, the muscle video, that in order to move things and in order to churn things and move things around, that's always done. Movement is always done by muscle. So we learned that aligning all of the body tubes, there's muscle. There's a lot of muscle around on the outsides that are helping churn things in the stomach and also moving the food down the tubes in the direction they need to go. So all these muscle layers are right there doing that job as well. So again, an intersection between the digestive system and the muscular system, because you do need to move all that food through from mouth to the end. All right. after the stomach, the stomach starts going right out into these smaller tubes. So right away, the stomach is this big kind of sac-like thing, but right away, once it's done churning and breaking everything down more with its enzymes, it starts right away in, for us, pretty much the last part of the story, which are these intestines or these tubes. And that's shown in this picture here. Again, no surprises here. They have a muscular layer because the food has to keep moving through. These have to squeeze to move the food, continue to move the food down the tubes. And they continue to have glands. They continue to also have glands that are in the walls of the intestines. So they're continuing to also have enzymes in the intestines. And there's other organs that we're not going to talk about that also make enzymes and that put enzymes in the intestines. So enzymes, I'm just going to write enzymes are added even inside the intestines. Oops. Enzymes are added even inside intestines, so they're continuing to all this whole time through every part of the system. You're getting a breaking down of these molecules. Now the other thing that happens is all these building blocks that's happening in these tubes. So if, let's say we're getting building blocks, we're finally getting the tiny little pieces in these tubes. This tube is sort of not really inside your body. These molecules need to get out into your bloodstream so that the rest of your cells have access to them. That cannot happen while everything is inside these tubes. Your muscle cells need some of these building blocks. Your brain cells need some of these building blocks. Everybody needs these building blocks that are getting formed inside the tubes. So at some point, these little building blocks have to get out. And what they're showing you here in this part of the figure is that the cells is that if this is the tube inside and you've got like a building blocks here and here and here, they are able to actually start passing through the cells to get into the blood that's just underneath. So if you've got building blocks here and here and here, the cells in the wall of the tubes, they kind of line the wall of the tube. The particles have to get out of the tube into your body. And that's what's happening here. These arrows are showing you the building blocks are coming out, and they will find their way to the blood system so that the blood vessels can give these building blocks to all the other cells in your body. So that's happening in the intestines. So again, we kind of trace the path, just a quick review. The mouth and the salivary glands were where things started. The salivary glands were the first glands to start making enzymes, which are doing the digestion, which is really just breaking down food into the building blocks for two reasons. Do you remember the two reasons? One was to get the building blocks. For the raw materials to build new things, it's the raw materials for your cells to build new things. And the second one was the energy. You get energy out of breaking down these molecules. So after the mouth, things went down the tube that leads to the stomach. That's the esophagus. The esophagus dumps the food that you've swallowed into your stomach. The stomach has all this muscle around it that churns, more glands that put in more enzymes, and the acid that also helps digest and kill microorganisms. So the food is really getting broken down into your stomach. Then the stomach sends it down into the intestines, the small intestine first, and then the large intestine. There are differences between what the small and large intestine do, but for us that's not important. But by the time these intestines are long, they're just like, there's many, many, many feet of intestine in your body. If you laid it out in a giant string, it would go across the classroom. Actually, it would. So there's lots of time for all the molecules to get broken down into the building blocks and move out of the tubes into your circulatory system so that your body's cells have access to all those building blocks. Finally, at the end of the large intestine, the food gets into the last part, which I should have talked about this, I suppose. The last part is called the colon. And when the food is when the food is at the colon, it's the end of the line. You've gotten everything you can get, all the resources that your body is able to get out of the food. And when the food is in your colon, that's when you will feel the urge to get rid of. That's what your body could not use. You'll feel the urge to go to the bathroom and get rid of that as just waste material. And that's it, the beginning and the end of digestion.